Why are you buying Starbucks? You're participating in the market economy.
Well, it's impossible to buy things without participating in the market economy.
Greetings, friends. I'm going to respond to a brief video titled Charlie Kirk Exposes Socialists' Starbucks Hypocrisy. But it builds on some thoughts I've been having recently because I was debating with some people informally on X. The original post was some guy celebrating billionaires, saying we got to be so thankful for billionaires. We got to be so thankful that they created these companies that employ hundreds of thousands of people and add to the economy. But we just we criticize billionaires. And I was definitely taking a critical role to this, but I'm not against people making money and the concept of being able to accrue wealth and employ people. But at some point we get to this situation where they sort to blend in with the government, because then they're so powerful they buy the government and then they stamp out all the other competition. But so we can get into more of a discussion about that. But there's this video by Charlie Kirk, or not by him, but one of his productions. Someone had made a clip where he's debating the socialist. I'm not really going to agree with the socialist either, but this is an opportunity to see some nuance in the stupid dialectic between socialism versus capitalism, or communism versus the free market. It's really a stupid dialectic.
Job that people like
have
is.
Have you ever used Amazon?
No, I actually.
Never.
No, I don't buy
But
from them.
You use Starbucks.
Okay.
So Starbucks, that's a billionaire. You know how rich Howard Schultz is? He's worth $5 billion. So you're participating in his exploitation.
Starbucks has better working conditions for their employees, though.
Well, first of all, it's impossible to avoid participating to some extent in the companies that are owned by billionaires. That's really, really hard to avoid unless you're going to go full Bush mode, full homesteader. So it's kind of a pointless thing to say, well, you're buying from Starbucks, you're a hypocrite because you criticize Amazon. It's very difficult to avoid buying from something which is going to benefit a billionaire at some point. So then you can't criticize any billionaires? I think you can. Maybe she has a problem with all billionaires. No, that's a discussion we can have. Like, who has the supreme power in your society? Are you going to just leave that to some fictional thing called the free market, which is just really not something that has ever really existed? Like, every market has been created in the history of mankind by certain agents for the benefit of certain groups of people. That's kind of just the way it is. But in the terms of having this free market that has no connection to nation or tradition, then that is a modern phenomenon, and we can discuss whether that's a good thing or not. I would say no, it tends not to be a good thing, because it totally reduces your country to an economic zone, just like the supermarket. Canada's a supermarket right now. So let's continue.
Starbucks has better working conditions for their employees, though.
Well, how do you know that?
Because they have a $15 minimum wage.
Wait.
Well, she brings up a good point. Some companies might treat their employees better, pay a better wage, have better working conditions. And then he says, well, how do you know that? Why does he have to ask, how do you know that? You can't just grant that? I mean, we can assume that, the big companies, they tend to treat their employees not so great. But there could be some differences. And shouldn't we recognize those? What's the problem with that question? What does it matter how you would know it or not? You can grant that some companies would have better conditions.
Well, how do you know that?
Because they have a $15 minimum wage.
Wait, so Starbucks billionaire good, Amazon billionaire bad. Just so we're sure.
I would not like either of them to be billionaires.
Well, I don't agree with either of them in this case. Starbucks, I don't understand. This is dumb. Starbucks billionaire good, Amazon billionaire bad. Maybe. Wouldn't the question be, do they have an unfair advantage? Do they really deserve to be billionaires? Does the state or the nation have any, I don't want to use the word right because that comes out of liberalism, but do they have any duty? Does the people have any duty to intervene against billionaires at some point? And I know that's going to trigger people and say, well, you're a communist. I'm not afraid of asking these questions. That's a fair question. I don't see why you have to set up this thing, well, is this billionaire a good one? Is that billionaire a bad one? We shouldn't have billionaires. I don't know. And then she says she doesn't really agree with these billionaires at all. I can't quite support that either, because the question would be why and to what end? If you can have billionaires that are participating to an end, which is in line with the people, then perhaps it's okay. So both of these people here, I think, are missing the mark from a traditional perspective.
Why are you buying Starbucks? You're participating in the market economy.
Well, it's impossible to buy things without participating in the
Hold on a
market
second.
economy.
You could have.
Yeah, she's right, Charlie. I mean, he's saying, well, you're participating in the market economy. The market economy is great because you're participating in it. Yeah, it's automatically a great thing. You're participating in it. It's like, suck it up. You're participating in the market economy. You're feeding into the thing which you wish would change. You're participating in something which you wish wouldn't be the case, which you wish wouldn't be better. Doesn't that just validate the fact that it's a good thing? Somehow it just follows that because you don't like something and you participated, we could never consider it being any other way, and that it perhaps might not be the best scenario for our society. You're participating in the market economy. And she says something like, well, it's impossible to avoid that. Yeah, it is, Charlie.
You could have went to a farmer's market. You could have bought something outside.
There's no farmer's market here.
There's no local coffee in Columbus at all.
No,
There's
not
no
near my house.
non-billionaire coffee distributors.
No, and I
You
think
could have
that
gotten
just
a Keurig. You could have gotten local. You could have gone That Guy Donuts. They don't serve Starbucks coffee.
Now, yes, you can be more motivated. You can find local options. There are these things. And yes, it is a good thing in principle to do the local organic community. To some extent, sure, we're all guilty of not doing more to build that sort of community. I shop at Walmart. I don't go to a farmer's market. So yeah, you can legitimately criticize me, but overall, he's also being way too idealistic and naive. She's not wrong that that's just not the structure of most of our society. We can't all just separate ourselves from the so-called market economy, which is always a controlled economy. It's not a free market. It's dominated by powerful agents, better or for worse. But we can't just extricate ourselves from that right away. We're trapped in this system for now. And I don't advocate revolution or any of that stuff. That all came out of liberalism. Communism and capitalism, they came out of liberalism. They're materialistic worldviews. They produce godless societies.
The point is, it's very easy to critique billionaires while you swish your Starbucks latte back and forth, made possible by...
So yeah, Charlie brings the point back to the critique of billionaires. It's very easy to critique billionaires. Building on my thoughts on the discussions I was having on X the other day, people were saying, well, the billionaires are special because they increase the GDP of the country. I don't know if they said that specifically, but they generate wealth, they employ all these thousands of people, they expand the economy in this manner. And of course, I have to grant them some points there. Yes, this is true. There will always be an elite structure to society. There will always be small numbers of people employing exponentially larger numbers of peasants. Yes, this is a fact. However, the implication was that no one else would have done it if these billionaires hadn't been there. And I would disagree. I think someone would come along and generally fill that need. And you could say that sometimes business people manufacture needs. That's another discussion. But if you're manufacturing a need which people didn't really need before, is it really a true need? So that's kind of another moral question that we don't need to get into here. But in terms of traditionally supplying the food and the logistics of running the society and maintaining the infrastructure, the plumbing and the electricity, all of these things, keeping the civilization running, that's not such a creative thing. That's just generally like figuring out how to manage the flow of production and transportation and payment of employees responsibly to manage these things, someone can come in and fill that. So it's not a coincidence that someone like Andrew Carnegie was able to make a steel monster in the late 19th century following the American Civil War. Likewise, Rockefeller consolidated most of the US oil industry. He bought out like vast numbers of competitors and created a true giant, or Vanderbilt in the railway industry and JP Morgan in the world of finance. Someone else would have done these things if those men hadn't been there. But I don't mean to discount that it does take individual genius. Western civilization has been driven forward by individuals who are great men, like Napoleon, and whether they're evil or good, the fact of great men and great geniuses do drive things forward. That's a different discussion for like saying like if Napoleon never existed, maybe history would have turned out differently. I can grant that. But I can't necessarily grant that if Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller had never existed, that other men wouldn't have filled in that role and developed these companies and pushed forward the technology and consolidated a lot of the market. I mean, I'm not denying that you need to be exceptionally intelligent and hardworking to rise to that status of being a billionaire. Even today, even if you inherit wealth, to maintain that in this kind of world takes natural skill and strength. But to think that we therefore owe these billionaires gratitude because they can pay us minimum wage and import the third world so they can keep paying us minimum wage as inflation increases, and that will decrease the cultural strength to ever resist these globalist capital, and they are capitalist, however much you cope with calling it crony capitalism or whatever kind of cope. Capitalism is not full capitalism. Yes, there's socialism too. But to act as if we need to go back to true capitalism. No, we've seen enough. We know what it's like. This is the world it produces. And yes, we've just like the communists who will say, oh, true communism was never implemented. We just need one more chance. It's not so different from capitalists who say, well, True capitalism has only rarely been enforced, maybe in the early days of the United States founding after the so-called revolution. Well, it was a revolution driven largely by merchants and bankers and commercial interests. It's perfectly reasonable to critique how on earth do we get these billionaires dominating everything, and how on earth can you expect us to be grateful for them when, for the most part, they participate in funding mass immigration into our societies. We cannot ignore the role of capitalism in fostering the dissolution of our nations. Hasta luego, amigos.